Welcome back to ZCB's Comics Conversations. Today we have a little bit of a different episode. I was only able to do audio for this interview because I went to a signing at a comic shop and there was kind of space restrictions, but it was amazing. And I'll give you more context. Hopefully you're here from my TikTok channel. And if you are, thank you for stopping by. And I'm excited to share kind of some of the context of this cool thing I got to do with you. First and foremost, shout out to Blackbird Comics and Coffee House in Orlando. They were fantastic hosts. They went out of their way and went above and beyond to make sure that I was comfortable and had a space to interview the creators that I did. They are fantastic. If you are in the Orlando area, please go visit their shop. It is amazing. It is all about community and it's all about comics and it's super, super rad. And they have great coffee and food. Initially, this interview started out that it was just supposed to be me and Fred. I'm friendly with Fred, obviously. I've interviewed him before, and he had a new project coming out. We found out, kind of through just miscommunication into communication, that he will be in Orlando. I live 2 hours away. It made sense that I would drive up and interview him in person, which I thought would be really cool because I'd never gotten the chance to meet him. We were planning that, and then I got an email that Joe Keatinge, the editor, was going to sit in on the interview too. I don't really know Joe at the time, and I said, oh yeah, hey, more the merrier. I love learning new things and meeting new people, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity. I got there early, and I was a little taken aback by the shop because it is beautiful, but I was waiting around, and when I got there and they got there, there were a ton of people in their entourage, and so I wanted to make sure that, like, hey, what's the deal? What are we doing? And very quickly, I realized that more people were involved in this than I thought. And every single person that was involved was super amazing. John Strand, the CEO of Black Hills Information Security, who's the parent company to Rekcah Comics, the publisher, also sat in on the interview. And I thought, okay, this guy's just the money guy. He's just kind of the head honcho. He's going to be able to just talk about like the tech side of it. But what I found out through conversation was that he actually had a really important say into the comic. He had a passion for it as well and was able to speak into the creative side and allow the narrative to shape based on the tech side. And I thought that was a really cool merger of tech and art. And he is a really great guy and super smart, probably one of the smartest people I've ever met and talked to. So it was really awesome to be able to have him in that conversation as well to inform the conversation, because me, Joe, and Fred could have talked about comics the entire time and it would have just been comics. But we also got to talk about InfoSec and cybersecurity in the future because John was able to speak into that. And I thought it was a really valuable addition. And before we get into the interview, I want to give a more holistic view of Rekcah Comics. Rekcah Comics is a publisher that started out of Black Hills Information Security. They initially were publishing zines and marketing materials and information about how to grow in cybersecurity and InfoSec, how to learn new things, do training. And then they decided they wanted to make a comic. And so they got linked up with Fred and some other people. And they were able to create this beautiful thing, which if you've seen my TikTok video, you know that I am a very big fan of. But the whole Rekcah entourage deserves some recognition. They are fantastic people. Everybody made me feel as if I was part of Rekcah Comics, even though I was just some dude who was asking for an interview with one of their creators. They made me feel as if I was part of their entourage the entire signing. Then I went out to dinner with a couple of them, got to pick their brains and have a really great time getting to know them and getting to talk comics and learn about the comics industry. And then we went to a private concert with a band called NoBandwidth, who also were super cool dudes, that they created an album specifically for the book, and I got to see songs played from that. And I thought it was an amazing time. And I could gush and gush and gush about it, but the conversation speaks for itself. I think the conversation was the coolest part. So in no real order of importance, but just in the order I took the pictures. First, Fred Van Lente and Joe Keatinge, the writer and editor for The Future Is. Thank you so much to them for their time, and John Strand as well for his time sitting down with the podcast. I appreciate it so much. Then we have Adam Freeman, who's one of the head marketing people that surrounded the tour and helped organize stuff. He worked for Valiant Comics and worked in the comics industry for a long time. He is a super cool wellspring of knowledge and one of the coolest people I've ever met. Then we have Deb Wigley, who also works for Rekcah Comics, who is just a fantastic, sweet person who was nothing but kind and generous with her time. Jason Blanchard, who also is one of the head honchos around The Future Is, who is able to kind of get it off the ground and work with John Strand and Black Hills. And then you have, that's everybody, actually. The guys in NoBandwidth. I didn't get a picture with them, but they did sign my vinyl. I got a vinyl for the the album, and I thought it was really cool. I got everybody from Rekcah to sign it, as well as NoBandwidth, and I think it was one of the coolest possessions I am now, and I think it's just super, super rad. I will link the digital link in the bio of the channel, and you can go listen to it because it's fantastic. So without further ado, thank you to Fred Van Lente, Joe Keatinge, and John Strand for their time. This is the interview.
All right, so I'm here at Blackbird Comics and Coffee House, and I'm joined by three very special guests. If you are watching this on YouTube, you will see in the title, I am joined by a good friend of the pod, Fred Van Lente, writer of The Future Is Blank. And then I have John Strand, the founder of Black Hills Information Security, who is basically the big boss. Am I correct in saying that? The big boss? One of the big bosses?
It's so fucking funny. It's so funny because yeah, sure.
All right, so we'll just call you the big boss, the solid snake of it all, just for simplicity's sake. And then we have Joe Keatinge, El Jefe, and we have Joe Keatinge, the editor of the Future Is series. Gentlemen, how are we? You just did a HackerCon earlier today in Tampa, Florida. We are currently in Maitland, Florida, outside of Orlando. How was it? Roundtable, what thoughts, opinions?
It was spectacular. You guys roll differently in InfoSec than we do in comics. I was telling Joe that I'd never signed so many books before 10 a.m. in my life. When I was told we had to report there at 8 a.m., I was kind of like, seriously? And then, nope, yeah.
Yep, seriously.
Seriously.
Jason had us up at like 7:30.
Yeah.
It was
Out the door, man. Yeah.
But it was awesome. Everyone was
So good.
It's easy to have energy that early in the morning. You see such excitement from the InfoSec community about the book, about their field in general, in the book specifically.
Yeah, it was so cool because, it's an InfoSec conference, and it's so many people come up and it's like, I came here for the comics. I heard there are the comics.
That's right.
I need the comic sticks, And so people are going for comics in a place that comics had, for the most part, not really existed.
They're bad, usually. The corporate comics are bad. If only our computer could be protected by McAfee and Symantec. It's like not good.
It's like those the DC did a crossover with Jared from Subway that didn't age well because that's really did
Is that here? We need a cop.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure everyone ended up in the same landfill as like Atari ET.
Yes.
There's no way that's still floating around.
As I tell these guys, I've been there. I've had the Avengers fight Ultron on behalf of Hilton Hotels. A lot of them is
Hey, a gig's a gig. I said that earlier today. Gigs agree. And I imagine that the InfoSec comics community is pretty much a very large circle instead of a Venn diagram, because the reality is nerds and nerds, regardless of field, and nerds love comics, and I feel like those cross over a lot. Do you find that that is true?
Looking at it right now, yes and no. I think a lot of us that were in computer security, I think when we were younger, like middle school, high school, this is something we spent a lot of time talking about. I was definitely into comic books. And then I forked and I arced into computers, and that took all of my time instead of doing comic books, which is interesting because no matter which path you choose, especially for a young male growing up in the 90s, it didn't involve girls, which is kind of an interesting approach to things. But no, I arced towards computers. Like once I fell in love with computers and hacking, that's where all of my effort. So it's really kind of this weird kind of connecting back and getting back into comments. And the thing I love is when you have people that come up and they talk to us and they're like, oh my God, I was really into comics, and this is like a tie-in of computer security and comics. And it's almost like seeing that rekindling. Because I think a lot of them had it at some point in their past, and we're trying to bring it back.
Yeah, and I feel like that comics love never goes away. It's always deep down. It's always there. It's always there. That's awesome. So I heard rumblings that you were a big 90s Dark Horse fan. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So who were some of your favorite characters, favorite series?
We talked about this a lot. I got hooked first on the Aliens, the old school black and white sequel to the movie Aliens. And I loved that. And then also there was like Hard Boiled, there was Concrete, Aliens versus Predator. And at some point, Dark Horse got really too big for their britches, and they got like beautiful airbrushing and all that. And somehow at that point, I started losing interest. I really liked a lot of the stuff that was the black and white, underground kind of punk rock comic thing, and I really loved that kind of vibe.
And that vibe, actually, it's funny that you say that punk rock, almost anti-authority sort of mentality, kind of bleeds through into the future is taking down corporations and doing it on the behalf of the people. There's a really great line, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, where Wheeler says, like, Tat says, oh, my mom sent you to save, or paid you to save me. And he says, that's implied we're getting paid. You know, and that's nice to hear, because he's in it for the people. He's in it for the right reasons.
Well,
to a certain
point out.
Yeah, okay, all right, we'll leave it open.
It seems that way for right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
You just said the morning giving away 300 comics. So
Yeah,
so
there you go.
there's definitely a lot of that Wheeler ethos here at Black Hills and at Rekcah.
And so, Joe, what was your introduction to comics? What were your favorite series growing up?
Yeah, well, nobody knows where it came from. They were just always there. My theory is that a lot of the toys in the early 80s were packaged with comics, you know, like Master of the Universe and all that kind of stuff. Bruce Timm, some of those.
Yep.
And, I just never let go, right? And I was blessed enough to be located near some of the best comic book stores in the world, like Hi-De-Ho Comics in Santa Monica, where, like, they were just every single kind of comic was all together. That store was a mess in the best way, and that like everything was stacked next to each other. So it was like
Del Rey.
exactly, yeah. There was like Rob Liefeld was right next to Robert Crumb, was next to Mobius, and whatever. And so that's how my brain formed around comics. And then came up. I was an Image kid, and loved like Eric Larson, Tom McFarlane, Jim Valentino, all those guys. Rob Liefeld mentioned before, and then man, like it's funny because I feel in some ways we took opposite paths because I was really. A family member of mine worked in hospital information systems, and so I grew up with Genie and BBSs, and I was dialing up, the Atlantis BBS to go play Doom with a bunch of strangers in the LA area.
Yep.
Reading 2600, and then the comics thing was where my brain just went,
Yeah.
and just never let go, and it's not going to happen. So,
Which is one of those beautiful things that sometimes at an early age you can form this attachment, and it just doesn't go away. Maybe regardless, you love it, you want to be in it. And then it's really cool when you actually get to like do it for a living, which I feel like is probably really special.
yeah, it's great. I think it's the best. I know it is the greatest storytelling form in the world.
Yeah, I would agree with you. My buddy John at Berserk Comics would absolutely tell you that. So let's dive into the book, The Future Is, which is coming out officially in stores May 28th. Am I correct in that? Yep. So May 28th, you can go to your LCS and get it, or it's not too late. Your LCS can probably order it for you.
They can do reorders.
You'll do a reorder. You can get it. I reread it this morning. It is an all-timer. I told you guys before we started. I think it's some of your guys' best work. I think it's fresh and unique. One of the things that really stuck with me is that it's a cyberpunk story, but it doesn't feel like it's copying from other cyberpunk stories. So, roundtable, whoever wants to answer, how do you keep it fresh enough that it doesn't feel like it's copying a very well-tread genre? With Cyberpunk 2077 coming out like within the past 10 years, and kind of being now kind of this defining story of the 2020s in the cyberpunk genre. You have things like The Matrix, Ghost in the Shell, all of these really iconic things. How do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it unique? How do you feel like you're not retreading too much territory?
Well, the obvious answer is probably the truest one, which is that most of us who get into this business of writing, we do it because there's fiction we love, and we end up even subconsciously copying other fiction. What we're doing with The Future Is, partly because John is the mastermind and all his great InfoSec people, is we're drawing from the news and real life, and so we're constantly reading and educating ourselves about what the future is, so we can put it in Future Is, right? So, or we're going retro. One of the big influences on this book was a novel Robert Heinlein wrote in the 60s called The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I think you, John, recommended I read. I never read Heinlein before.
I'd never even heard of it.
And I was like, this guy has a lot of interesting ideas about politics and gender relations. However, I got a lot of great ideas from the book, which is set on the moon. The first issue is set on the moon. They're pulling a heist on a casino on the moon. That's also doing human trafficking. So there's a lot. It's awesome. So it's a combination of going pre-Neuromancer and Blade Runner, right? It's a combination of classic science fiction and literally stuff that we are emailing each other constantly, sharing in text threads that we just read. There's an opening, we don't start on the moon, we start in the Arctic Circle, where they've sunk these massive servers from the bottom of the ocean floor to cool them because they superheat so much. And that is something Microsoft has been trying to do, well, successfly done off the coast of Scotland, which is just some random...
How Metal Gear Solid as well.
I know, right? Yeah. So yeah, and so you keep it fresh by just always refreshing your newsfeed, seeing what the world has come up with.
Absolutely.
And then ultimately, if we go back to what I think is like the golden age of science fiction in the 50s and 60s, and even into the 70s, during that period of time, a lot of the science fiction authors were literally looking at what is cutting edge science today and then extrapolating what was that going to be in the future. And that kind of goes to the name when we coming up with ideas and things like that, where we wanted to do that same thing today. And I feel like a lot of science fiction has been tidally locked into, like, for better or for worse, Star Wars, Blade Runner, Matrix, and we stop right there. And the best thing that you can do for good science fiction is look at science reality and then extrapolate what is that going to do to us moving forward. And those are the conversations that we've been having.
Yeah.
And also the greater questions that they asked, right? Because it's like, I think that's why like books like Fahrenheit 451 persist to this day, because they're answering universal questions that you're always going to be grappling with on a humanitarian level. You know, some of the stuff that we're talking about, like, especially like I'm thinking like 8 through 12, you know, that storyline there, which I'm not going to get to the details of, but there's more than just like, you know, it's an evil robot, or he's got, you know, whatever. Like, there's other things that we're exploring, or like we were breaking down an issue on the van ride down here, and it was an awesome pitch, and we just had to figure, okay, what's the emotional core of this that answers something that's more universal that does this. And Fred's been knocking it out of the park with this book, and
Absolutely,
and putting answer that question.
No, go on. Go on.
And that's one of the things working with Fred. I think Fred usually starts with concepts that are flipping crazy, right?
Yeah.
Right in the beginning, I'm not going to get into it, but we have like killer whales and orcas with laser beams on that. Okay?
that was one of the best parts.
And I honestly felt like that was
The Russians have been doing for decades.
Yeah, they haven't, right? But I think that was kind of one of the first points that, well, maybe not the first, but for me, the first I picked up, where Fred had an idea. He's like, I got this crazy thing. Because he's got to push me, right? Because I got to write a check for this, right? You got to find out how far can we push this guy.
Loosen those purse strings.
And he came up with this idea and he explained it to me, and the way he described it was awesome. But more importantly, immediately, here's links and articles. The United States Navy has been training SEALs and dolphins, and the Russians have been doing this type of training. And kind of get into like the Ultra program as well. And it's like, where does that go in like 30, 40 years and that level of training? And we think it involves dolphins and killer whales with laser beams. But we want to ground it, right? So if somebody, it was Baxter, Manifold Time or Manifold Space, I can't remember which book. At the end of it, he said, all of the stuff in this book is true. And he listed out all the science fiction elements, and he talked back to physics, and he tied it back to science and all these different studies. And then at the end, he said everything else was made up.
Yeah.
So anything you see here that's getting a little bit science fiction-y, we're trying to keep it grounded in what we're seeing today.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things I think about the book is that you also, one of the key factors of this book and changes what comics are and what comics probably will be, is the CTF activities, puzzles, problems that are presented throughout the book. So can you explain the CTF that allows for people to dive in and look at the actual grounded reality of the hacking?
So the whole idea of the CTF is in a lot of comics, when something happens, there's, especially with hacking, it's like this magical hack where the attacker's typing really fast and they're like, I'm in their firewall with JavaScript. And anybody that's in computer security sees that and they groan, right? And we wanted to make sure that any of the hacks that actually happen are actual real-world hacks. And we wanted to then put in a little, CTF stands for Capture the Flag. So throughout the comic, there's little CTFs where the hack that happens in the comic, you can actually do. We have real servers out online where people can break in and get a little key and get a little flag, and they have a leaderboard, and they can submit their answers. So really, we're trying to make this like, you can literally be the hero in the comic. You can literally feel that hack and do that thing that is in the comic. Once again, in an effort to try to keep it grounded.
Yeah.
And one thing I really like about it too, this came up on the fan ride down here, we're discovering new ways to make it integrated into the storytelling.
Yeah.
So it's not like a lot of the time, I think if someone would attempted something like this, and I don't think they have, but I could see a version of it where it's just like the thing on the side. Here's the comic, and then there's a CTF on the side. Or this and this issue where we're coming to, where John, technologically minded, you have this idea for the story, and it's like, well, you could actually do, again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but X, Y, and Z to actually make it more integrated. So now you are participating in the story as opposed to just doing this thing on the side.
Well, and then it was cool in the van ride down. We're not going to talk about it too much. Yeah. But it actually kind of changed kind of the way Fred was looking at the story, and kind of created some ambiguity that we think made the story better. Yeah. So, and that's been one of the cool things about working in this team is I can go way off in left field and talk about philosophy. Like we talked about Greek philosophy for the next iteration that's coming up. And we've talked about, sentient like plant nanotechnology and kind of getting really, really crazy, but constantly trying to keep it grounded with a what if conversation. And it's kind of weird. I finally have some people I can have those conversations with. And it's not just like we're sitting around smoking pot and getting crazy. It's like, no. We're kind of trying to throw ideas in this soup that then gets turned into a narrative story that pulls it all together. And that's been a lot.
And that's like the natural evolution of being like a pot smoking conspiracy nerd or something when you're a kid and you're thinking about all this stuff, and then this is the natural progression in that.
At Show the Kids, there's a career for you out there.
One of the cool, I don't know how many kids are actually listening, but one of the coolest things is that it's all about the extrapolation of it. That's really what stuck with me, is that it's about finding the end of the road, or even just, if you can't find the end, the continuing path of this is where that concept ends up, as you're saying. This is where these things are integrated in real life. And it also is interactive. I remember, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. There was a game released maybe a decade ago called Hacknet.
Yeah.
And it's really simple UI. It's told through the perspective of you're a hacker that gets recruited by essentially Anonymous.
Yeah.
And you now have to perform these hacks, get these kernels, get these programs, get these tools. And you kind of level up, and there is a story, and it's text-based, there's no voice acting from what I remember, and it was really cool, and it reminded me of that, because as I'm sitting there going to the link to start these CTFs, and
you're the hero of the story.
Yeah,
you're that person.
And that's one of the coolest things to me, is that this book changes what a comic is. As much as you can imagine yourself behind the mask of Peter Parker, or you can imagine yourself as someone like Jesse Custer from Preacher, which is one of my series. The person losing their faith, seeking justice for something greater than them. And you can do that now through these characters. And the characters are all super likable. So I want to transition to the story of the book a little bit. To give background, we're following a team of the White Hats. Is that what they're kind of calling themselves?
Whitish hat.
Yeah. And they are, hackers for good. Yeah, Ivory. Sure. And they are Wheeler, Bela, Sally, Martina, my apologies. Slim, Tuffy, and is it Pisces?
How you're getting into their avatar, like
I'm getting there. But they are also characters in it themselves. They're given.
They are.
And then we have Arf and Art.
Yes.
An MI, I didn't mean to offend. But we're about 3 years before it's considered offensive. We have an MI, a machine intelligence, that has an emotional support dog that to interact with. Everybody has given these characters their own voice in a really great way. Some writers are not very good at writing multiple characters. In all my amateur writing, it's hard to create this unique voice for all these people, but when you have that experience, it's really helpful. How did you take the influences around you to create these characters? Were there specific characters that inspired Wheeler? Were there specific characters that inspired Martina? I don't know why I keep doing that. But Fred, starting with you, Archer and Armstrong has Mary Maria Archer, who seems kind of like a Martina type. She's very accomplished. She's very headstrong. She can do the infiltration. She can do the dirty work. How did we find, as a group, because I know it's not just a one-person effort, those influences and those voices?
Well, If someone named Martina just moved into my building, and it's very see her mail. Nope.
Martina, there it is.
Yeah. Well, this project, like many projects, has been gestating for a long time. Initially, me and John and some of his Black Hills people and some of our comics people met in the basement of a comic book store in Brooklyn. And I just sort of listened to John and his guys talk about what they do and some of the people on their team. And a lot of the characters, if not most of the characters, came out of that discussion of trying to figure out, okay, well, one guy's really good at seeing vulnerabilities, but is so neurotic that he sees danger everywhere. And so he's got his neurodivergent has got a lot of issues, you know. The idea behind Martina was that I thought it'd be cool. She's a former Olympic athlete who got into a bad situation. John mentioned that one of the things Black Hills has to deal with a lot is people ask them to spy on their spouses. So they say no.
It was actually a TV show that wanted us to do that, where we'd hack into spouses' computers.
That sounds highly illegal.
No, it's totally legal.
Really?
Because if you're married and you own the computer and your wife owns the computer, you can give me permission to gain access to that computer.
So it's only the spouses you can spy on.
Dirty work, and we turn that down. But yeah, that's kind of
that's grimy.
It is grimy. It is grimy. And we don't do that, for the record. That's crossing a line.
That's wild.
So Martine is like the pretty girl in the Munsters, like she's the one normal person.
Yeah.
But she's also an Olympic level athlete who does all like the physical infiltration.
Yeah, she's
work.
like Snake Eyes, basically.
Exactly.
She's going in doing this.
She's a ball gal.
Yeah.
And Sally is great because you
Old
don't really
school, tough as nails.
Yeah, you don't really think of senior citizens as being hackers, but I know that that's based on someone on the Black Hills team that I just, as it turns out, I got her name right by accident. I don't even know how that happened, but so yeah, she lived in orbit forever.
Yeah, which reminds me of The Expanse, where the Belters can't go on Earth gravity because it will wreck them. So she has to have this like mech suit walker again.
Yeah, she's basically the
awesome.
full body walker. So she's like Tony Stark if he was a hobo.
Yeah, basically.
So that's what's going on there. And then you already brought up Arf, who's the dog, who is this emotional support animal to Art, who is the MI who lives on his collar and a node on his collar. And then Wheeler's like our mysterious Professor X. We don't really know what his deal is, but he's gathered the whole team together to go on the.
I did sort of get like Nick Fury vibes of like, because he also like not to spoil too much of the story per se, but he did have an official background working with like the military and the government, and now he's kind of freelance. He's doing his thing. He's also well funded, which I'm really interested in seeing how
Does that money come?
how does this guy maintain operations, which is super interesting. And I think this book is just like all over the place in the greatest way, meaning there's so many deep things to be explored. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a 50 issue commitment. 60 issue commitment. I feel as if you will get enough time and issues to really flesh out some of these awesome
That's right.
and concepts.
It's one of the interesting things for me is how there's so many people in the industry that are like shocked by that. And for me, in my company, this is awesome from the perspective of giving it to the people that are fans of Rekcah Publishing, and they come to our conferences, and we gave out 500 today.
It's wild.
2 hours.
That was crazy.
It's
That was
crazy.
one of the craziest times.
And that's one conference. And we do that all the time, right? So this is amazing for me to kind of, we don't do marketing, we call it content community. How can we get content out there? How can we build community around something cool? And this is like one of the coolest things we've done.
And I will say one of the coolest things they've done, and this has not come up yet, but this is a 120-page first issue. Like, I'm a Gen X.
Well,
Very large.
112.
112, fair enough.
Joe the editor would know.
That's right. I guess that's right. There's a part. Anyway, I'm following. I know why I think it's longer.
Don't
than
even
actually
talk
is.
about it.
Yeah,
Don't even talk
I
about
won't. Anyway, it's for 1337. It's over 100 pages, and it's just the first issue.
Yeah.
Subsequent issues will be slightly closer to regular comics.
But these are brand new characters, it's a brand new publisher, and it was like it's such a great way, in a bold, innovative way, to just introduce you and get you into this world. You understand what the buy-in is, and you have the questions that you ended it with. I don't think it spoils anything to say 2 through 7 jump back a bit in time, and you actually see how Black Mountain gets built and how where people come from, the stuff they've dealt with. First, the second issue deals with Martina, the third issue deals with Eli, so on and so on.
I love when a team book gets individual issues to explore who these characters are and what their deal is. I think that's always so special. And I honestly love the little influences because correct me if I'm wrong, but Black Mountain, Black Mesa, this golden era PC gaming and computers and science. I don't know how intentional that was.
That's fantastic. Totally. I saw it that way. That's great.
You should. All right, so I give you permission to steal that for content community. Regarding
we're gonna steal that.
That's right. Yeah. And so to highlight too, like Rekcah Comics, hacker backwards, Reckah, is the in-house kind of publishing arm of Black Hills.
Well, we started creating so much content. It wasn't just comics. We've got zines that are around hacking and computer security. We have little getting started guides, and we wanted to kind of have the ability to branch out and do more than just comics, right? And ideally, I have this dream, and it's going to fail, is I would like to see more companies doing cool comics as part of their marketing strategy. So, you won't see, BHIS comes to save the day. It's not like that, right? And I think that people can create really sticky and fantastic marketing if they can just engage the creative forces of whatever community they're in, whether it's music or whether it's comics or whatever. And there's great talent out there. And I'll give you an example. If I go to a conference, you go to conferences, you get t-shirts, right?
Yeah.
T-shirt is like $10 for me to buy and get that out.
Yeah.
This is much less than $10.
Yeah, great.
Right? And it's far more fun, right? Like you've read it 2-3 times and you're like getting like different things out of it. And that's really important for me. And I'd like to see more people in the industry start doing that, not just in security, but like there's so much talent out there.
Yeah, I mean, think about if schools, universities, not even art schools per se, but like universities decided to fund and publish student work and giving them opportunities to actually do this.
Unfortunately, professionals.
Yeah,
to bring you into this.
And one of the things that we're seeing, unfortunately, in America is like kind of the lack of arts funding. It seems like it gets cut every year.
My first published comic was in the Student Center at Syracuse. We got money from the school to publish our own comics.
And we're looking at like marketing and stuff, and even art in an AI universe, right? This is not something AI can do.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
This is something that requires human collaboration to come up with something that is unique and interesting. And I think if people don't pick up on this as like a possible path forward, they're going to just get plowed under the AI machine. And then what happens is everything's going to look the same because it's all created by AI, the same types of stories, the same types of art. And these things will stand out because AI is nothing but a massive plagiarism engine.
That is so refreshing to hear from a guy who's in the tech industry, also basically heading a publishing company. That is like the most refreshing thing I've ever.
Oh, my whole team outside of the comic, they're all terrible. They're like, oh my God, are we going to go out of business? But their stuff looks and feels different and it feels organic.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is absolutely important. We've got to embrace that.
I also want to highlight, because he's not here and we're, not able to speak with him, Ennio Bufi's art is fantastic. Yeah. This art is so top tier. It's dynamic, it's fun, it's fresh, but it does create this like raw quality that AI could never replicate. Like this is what makes comics feel alive.
Well, yeah, and so we're working with actually many different artists, but 2 primary artists, Ennio and Amaro de Salsandro. And there's a really interesting thing going on in Italy right now because Italian comics have always existed. They never had the comics code. It's always been part of the culture, and they're geographically and in terms of the publishing model base where they're getting manga. They're getting everything. And so this mix is going into this, like their schools are really back in this and funding this. And so that's why you go on the rack over here, there's a million Italian artists who are coming up.
Federico Vincentini, and Marco Cicchetto, like all of these.
We didn't hire Ennio and Mario just to stay on schedule. It's two different guys who are giving two different perspectives, and both of them are very different, and both of them are very engaging. And I mean, if I can for a second, like that's why we're doing the cover artist strategy we're doing. We're doing 60 issues. There's one cover per issue, but every issue is a total banger of an artist. Like my goal editorially, John gave us two rules. One of which was that the readers to hear the story. The other one was make great comics. Took that very seriously. And so, especially when it comes to the cover artists, that's why I'm approaching the best artists in the comics industry to come.
And everything out. I'm going to reveal it. I hope it's okay. It's been given out to 500 people already. The cover artist for issue 1 is Jay Lee.
I'll tell you the first
famous.
The first 7 is Jay Lee, Mike Huddleston, Rob Guillory from Chew and Farmhand, Jim Mahfood, then Brandon Graham, Nick Patera, and Michael Allred.
Dude, Michael.
Oh, yeah.
That's also such a unique style difference from artist to artist to artist together.
We got a piece of the van from a certain person who will not name.
Yeah, I do not mention that, but we got one of the greatest artists of all time, science fiction artists of all time, to contribute a cover, and it turned in.
God.
And
it got Ralph McQuarrie.
Dude, that would be amazing.
It's a Ouija board.
But But yeah, I mean, we're here to make great comics.
Well, I kind of want to riff on the idea of AI versus what we're doing and what we're trying to do. I feel like AI became possible because everything became homogenized, right? It's like, I love comics, so we were talking about it, and there's so many stories to be told, but it seems like we're constantly getting funneled into the Marvel universe, the DC universe. And I got a soft spot in my heart. We talked about Dark Horse Comics, stuff. Independent comics and new stories, new ideas, new characters is where I'm really, I think that's where we got to go. Yeah. Because if we keep pushing that frontier, AI can't follow us. AI can only follow where we've already been. Yeah. So if we can keep moving forward, we can stay outside of that ember.
Yeah. And there's a reason that I think when you speak about that homogenization of a style or of a format, that's where you get, the early 2000s, it seemed like superhero comics all had a very similar look, whether it wasn't the same, it's not a one-to-one, but all of them felt the same. And I think that was like kind of led by Jim Lee. Like his style really seemed to embody the 2000s. I feel like there was this big indie boom then, right? You had series like Why the Last Man. You had series like Walking Dead that became so popular, these big things, right? We're now seeing like Revival. Finally, Tim Seeley's and Mike Norton's Revival is finally getting a TV show actually followed through on. It releases, I think, this summer. It's getting reprints in Omnis. Chew is getting a reprint. Like all of this stuff, which I ordered and got.
We need that to keep human creativity moving forward.
Exactly.
Otherwise, we just go to sleep.
And I think we're there. I mean, we have a friend of my channel, Tony Fleece and Tim Seeley. They created Local Man. We have even Hack / Body Bags. You have Tim Seeley bringing forth these early 2000s indie titles back to comics forefront. You have Bug Wars by Jason Aaron and Mahmoud Asrar. You're seeing these big comic creators go in the indie creator-owned route. Like with Distillery. Distillery is probably the biggest example where you get these all-star casts together to push that forward.
Well, and don't get me wrong. Like I love a good Batman comic. I love a good Spider-Man comic. But like there is this myth that the old ideas are what keep the long tail of any art form. And the truth is, new ideas are always a thing that perpetuates things into the future and creates like every single book, even stuff like Dark Knight Returns, which yes, that was a retelling of Batman, but Batman was done. Batman was going to be Zorro, was going to be a Phantom, which I love those characters, but they're not as predominant as they were before. And Frank Miller and Lynn Varley and Klaus Janson went all out on creating a new vision of this thing that was so different from everything that had gone before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned like Walking Dead and Why the Last Man, like all this stuff. Like you want to be cold and look at the money. I prefer not to look at it that way, but fine, take that approach. Like show me the thing that has lasted longer that wasn't based on somebody.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. One of the hottest books right now, one of the hottest properties is Invincible, a book that started in 2003.
And you know what? You know what that was motivated by? Was it motivated to develop IP? It was motivated to tell the best story of all time because Robert and Corey Walker initially, and then Ryan Ollie just love superhero comics.
Yeah.
What could we do? The superhero comics haven't done before. It wasn't, hey, if we do this and we do enough issues of it, maybe a cartoon could be made.
I
We tell a great story first.
I think that becomes possible when people like me get the fuck out of the way. Right? You know, and I think that, you know, we have a lot of conversations, we have a lot of give and take, and you know, it's just at some point, like, you gotta let the story go, right? You gotta let it go. But I think sometimes you get people like, my favorite thing is the story from God, what's his name? He talks about the producer of Wild Wild West. He wrote a script for the Superman movie, and he was talking about.
Oh, Richard Dunn?
No,
What is it? No, Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith. Where he's talking about it to this producer, and he's like, you know what you need? You need to have Superman wrestling with a polar bear, and then, you know, what about a spider? Spiders and all this stuff.
Right.
Sure as hell, the spider shows up in Wild Wild West. At some point, like whenever I'm talking with the creative team, I don't want to be that guy, even though I am that guy. But it's really, really important, I think, at some point to like get the money out of the system and focus on quality, not trying to chase the dollars. Because if you try to chase the money, you're gonna miss the mark completely every single time.
Yeah, you guys are so fucking cool, dude. I'm sitting here and honestly, like, it's hard not to like be all in, because as I'm listening to you, Joe, I hear your passion about comics in general, not just the comic you're helping create. And John, I hear your passion for all of it and what you're doing and what you chose with profession. I know Fred's passion, right? He chose to write.
I wear my heart on my sleeve.
Yeah, but it's so refreshing to hear people who also are in the money. Like, John, you're in the money. You are the money guy, so to speak. And to hear someone in that position, instead of being like David Zaslav, who ruined WB, you are the guy who's like, all right, let's go. Like, let's give it to the creatives and let them drive it. And you're willing
that
to
also
help
goes
work
bi-directional, right? Because I set boundaries, right? And, you know, it's kind of like, oh, that's not real, or it's going to be hard for me to figure out technically how to make that happen, kind of in the background, but I can kind of set these boundaries, and I think they're pretty wide boundaries, honestly. But honestly, at the end of the day, I want a story that's going to be interesting to me. I don't want the same story. Like, I don't want to go to these guys and be like, so I got this story. Okay, this guy, we're going to call him the One. And everybody is living in this computer universe, and be like, that's the Matrix, dude. Yeah, but we can't.
There's kung fu everywhere.
go back 27 years.
No, but we can't call it that. So no, it's just, you know, you got to kind of get out of the way, but you got to have like a really good conversation. And I love this team because we don't really get offended.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, you know, that's stupid or F you or anything like that. It's just like crazy ideas, and then it's constantly evolving until you go in and you start writing it, and then out pops something that's kind of neat.
And there's continue.
Oh, I was gonna say, but there are things where I'm like annotating, like whenever we're going through it, we're reading it, we give you things, and I'm like, dude, this doesn't make any sense. And he comes back, he's like, no, here's an article, like that thing is actually happening. I'm like, holy shit.
I bring receipts, Zach.
Yeah, he brings receipts.
You walk the walk, man.
What was I remember we got into a conversation about sign language, because sign language is a theme in this, right? And I didn't have a dog in that hunt, but some of the people in the team did, and they went back and forth, and I think it tightened that section up. Because
And Ennio executed that sequence really well. It's
so
Amazing,
good. So good.
And when Roanoke basically goes like, my machine can read fucking sign language.
That was so awesome. I'm an artificial intelligence, of course.
So good. That was such a good man. I love it. And I think I lost my train of thought. Never mind.
It's not a problem. That's all we do here, man. It's
Yeah.
just
Collaborative process. What I want to touch on what you said about, you know, get out of the way, give wide boundaries, is you realize though that like the truest art form about making good comics is make it for yourself. Like any auteur director, any prolific writer of any kind will tell you, like, I didn't write this to be a mass bestseller. I wrote it for me. Yeah. And then people pick up on that genuine attitude. They pick up on that authenticity. And that, to me, like reading this book multiple times, like you said, like I've read it twice. Reading it, I feel like I obviously know Fred, but I feel like I knew everybody involved. because it speaks and breathes like authenticity.
Dude, when
That's why, like, a common question you get when you're a comics writer is, "What's the character your favorite character that you've never written before?" Or
Unfortunately, I've asked you that question.
well, everybody does.
I don't want to be bad or anything. That's a good question to ask. I'm gonna write that one down. Go ahead.
But what I like and what I love about this job is when people bring me stuff that it never would have occurred to me to do. Had John and Jason Lasher and said, "Hey, you want to do comics about cybersecurity?" And then you just binge it, and it's freaking awesome. And then my life is so much more enriched by doing it, and I hope I can just convey some of that to the reader.
Yeah.
Well, and that kind of goes back to the initial butt snipping in New York City. I don't like travel. I travel a lot for my job. And Jason, who's kind of the person behind this, the true Nick Fury.
Unfortunately, he could not sit through this.
He's
but-
got his own thing. And he's like, dude, you're coming out to New York. You're going to meet the team. And I'm like, I don't want to go to New York. I don't want to meet the team.
And where are you based? Just
I'm
for
based in
reference.
Deadwood, South Dakota.
Oh,
yeah,
Jesus.
honest to God.
Yeah, oh, Black Hills. Okay.
Like the TV show, yes, the real actual Deadwood, South Dakota.
That's cool as shit, dude.
I don't want to go there, right? And to be honest, like this whole entire idea, I knew Jason was in with the industry because he loves comics and he ran a comic book store and he did such a good job of it. I don't know the industry. I don't know the players. I don't understand the complexities of all of it. So I fly out to New York and I tell Jason, I'm like, you know, we're going to meet he says, we're going to meet at this address. I'm like, dude, if I show up in New York City and it's some kind of, you know, fluorescent light, drop seal, clean WeWork space, I'm gonna fucking lose it. I don't want that. And these guys, and I don't think he had a chance to tell you guys, like if you had set up, change venues now. But we showed up. What was the name of the comic book store?
Anyone Comics.
Yes.
Demetrios.
Fantastic.
Still see it.
Dude, I'm going to shout them out, dude.
Oh, you're going to shout.
I'll follow them on Instagram and everything, man. I love it.
We go down in the basement, and it's like this cool underground, like they got toys and board games and stuff, and it felt more genuine and authentic. And then from your side, I think there was some trepidation. I know Adam was talking about this with, like, oh God, what are we getting into? Dude, it's a paycheck. It's going to be another shitty corporate comic, and it's going to be a paycheck. And it was really nice to kind of, I think literally within the first half hour, we realized that we weren't in that space. Because I was afraid I was going to be sold some shitty corporate comic from a comic book company. And they were afraid that they were going to be writing a shitty corporate
One of the running jokes of this week, because we've been touring all over, this is our last stop. Well, next stop.
We got a concert for the fan search, right?
The Orlando area in general is our last stop, very broadly speaking. But we've been seeing a lot of, like, I'll say well-meaning but poorly executed superhero cybersecurity comics where it's always
very generous.
It's always Captain Firewall or whatever.
No. It was like, what was the name of that company? I can't remember. It was, I can't remember.
It's like most
Threat
other
Locker.
releases.
No, literally,
Fire
it was
Fox.
Captain Threat Locker, the name of the company.
You know, Threat Locker was also right behind us at the conference.
Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, they're there.
So shit talking extra loud while you're there.
No, good people, good product. You know, it's just really horribly executed comic. That's all. So go ahead.
Well, if I can speak, so a couple names have been mentioned that I want to touch on. One was the chief creative officer, Jason Blanchard. He's a guy who ran he co-ran a comic shop in Florida, is the name of the store. And that store was revolutionary. I was working in sales and marketing at Image Comics at the time. They were coming up, and they changed the industry. Like the comic shop we're sitting in, run by amazing people, and really inspired by like the community building that Jason was doing there. He also gave us one rule when it came to every single thing, whether it was marketing ideas or cover ideas, how we release this book, was don't do what you've done before. And the other name that he's mentioned that keeps coming up is it's the guys running our publishing, Adam Freeman. Like that's the guy you get for that. If you want to think in ways about publishing or marketing or whatever, and getting comics in the hands of people, which is the ultimate goal, like he's not doing anything to like doing a 100-page first issue. You know how many people in the comments are like, you guys are crazy. You know what? I'm not going to get into specifics, but I will say we've exceeded our order numbers, and I think the order numbers that guys were assuming based off of what we were doing. And I don't know, man, it just goes to show, like, people want new.
Yes.
And so John assembled this team of people who, no one's like, well, that's not the way you do it. I've never heard that. I've never heard like, that's not the way we should do it.
I always hear that from your side of the street, though.
Yeah.
Like, I keep getting these weird backsplatter conversations where this size first issue not been done, or and it's a little bit of static. I don't want to make it a bigger beef than it is, because I don't even think it's a beef.
Yeah.
But like the way that we're doing this and committing to what we're doing is, you know, I only get that static from your side of the street. What's up?
And this is signings bird.
Oh, we're gonna start here in just a little bit. So, but yeah, we got everyone.
Speaking of which, we got a guest voice. We have a signing to do later, so unfortunately we don't have all day. We got to wrap it up. But
Right now.
to emphasize,
Starting right now.
Rekcah Comics is releasing The Future Is, and the reveal for the end answer is The Future Is.
Well, actually, you know what? I was been thinking about this. It's like read a rainbow, brother. You got to read the book for yourself.
Okay, all right, fair enough. You got to do the work. You got to
The number one answer we get from people is the future is fucked.
Yeah, that's what I
Keeps
said.
showing up again and again and again.
But you know what? I don't believe
it's
it,
not.
so I'm not going to keep talking.
Every issue's got a new answer, and that's the cool thing. You're like,
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are committed to 59 more after this one.
59.
They won't all be 100 pages.
No.
No, unfortunately, because it is great. And I want to inject it into my veins. I need an IV, a main line of.
I don't like comics that are too short, man.
Yeah.
I want to feel like I got something. And when
I
I give me
agree with you. Absolutely. So it releases May 28th in your LCS. If your LCS did not order it, they can reorder it through Lunar right now.
Yes.
I know that for a fact because my buddy John went and did it. And I promise you will not regret it. This book is an all-timer. Thank you to Fred Van Lente, John Strand, and Joe Keatinge. Thank you so much for being
Pleasure having
I
us.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you again to the folks at Rekcah Comics. Everybody was so generous and so kind. They were the nicest people I've ever met, and every person was nicer than the last. It was fantastic meeting them all. I look forward to engaging with their work and working with them again. They were fantastic. Make sure to pick up The Future Is issue 1 on sale Wednesday, May 28th. That's just a couple days from now. If your LCS did not order it, they can order it through Lunar right now, and I promise you can get it within the next couple weeks. Please make sure to go pick it up. Make sure to stay tuned. As always, thanks for dropping in. I'll see you next time.
One, bitches in the upper tier, versatile temp.